is September 29th, 2015. I hope you all are enjoying these beautiful energies that we received from that amazing eclipse. I don't know how many of you were able to see it, but me and my kids got to see it. It was really awesome. Did you get to see any of that, Connie?
I saw the eclipse, yes. And nice to be back. Hi, everyone. Yes, we saw the eclipse. And, you know, this was actually the first full moon that Daniel has not reacted to. I mean, every time there is a full moon, without fail, it's like, you know how wolves howl at the moon? Daniel screams at the universe. So this was a little different.
Awesome. Did he have anything to share about it, or you just noticed a difference in him?
No, he hasn't been. He's been very quiet lately on the board. The only thing he's been talking to me about is doing my spiritual homework. There are certain books that he wants me to read in a certain order. I cannot switch the order of the books or I'll get in trouble. He lets me know. Yeah, he does not appreciate if I because I want to read, you know, I'm trying to Alex Marcoa, I wanted to read her book next, and he's like, no, hers is after that one. You can't even. And it's funny because the book that he has me reading, I'm like, what? The first few pages I was thinking, why am I reading this? But then as I got further into the book, I was like, oh, you're wanting me to read about the new world. Okay, I get it. So that's another story. But anyway.
Wow, that's so fascinating. You know, we should have another show. Just I think it's about time. I was feeling that where we should have some time with Q&A with just Connie, so that we can, when you're ready, we can kind of dive into you with your spiritual journey at this point, because I know you're at a really important place, and you know, just so that we can support you and hold that space for you, as well as learn right alongside you and with that. Yeah, and I do want to welcome you back, absolutely, because you guys were under the weather, and so we'll have a discussion about that a little bit later. What are you going to say?
Oh, nothing. That's great. Actually, I've been writing some short stories about a few of our experiences since 2011, and I'm telling you, as I was writing these stories, I don't know if I sent you one, but as I was writing these stories, I was thinking, oh my goodness, someone would probably read this and think, this girl is lying her behind off. This does not happen. But you know, I'm going to tell you, like I tell my husband, we are not this smart to make this up. I mean, it takes a lot of creative thinking to go, okay, I'm going to say this and that. And it's, you know, it's just these stories and all that I am experiencing with disclosures or, you know, government conspiracy is really taking me to a new level to where I actually see the illusions. Because before I'd hear a lot of, oh, we live in an illusory world, but I didn't understand that. But now I see what the illusions are, you know, and it's not anything to be scared of, because I think some people, once they start realizing this, they become frightened of it. But it's nothing to be afraid of. It's only something to go inside internally and learn from, you know. Like, for instance, you could say, okay, oh, that's why I had this experience because of this, or that's why we're all going through that because of them. Not, oh, I want to scratch their eyeballs out when everything's, you know, because some people are going to want to, you guys out there, if you're listening, when all the disclosure comes out, don't try to scratch people's eyes out, okay? Just love, all right? Because it's going to make some people go a little, you know, ballistic. So it's just a learning experience for us, so we can tap into our inner godhood or goddesshood. That's all it is.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I love everything that you pointed out, and I kind of actually alluded to this a little bit in the email that introduced this to those that are on our list and receive, you know, the replays and just little reminders. I always, you know, spew out whatever's coming through at that point. And now I'm kind of forgetting what you said, but it really does have to do with going within, as we've been saying. You know, this part of the book is really important. And I love that you brought up, you know, what essentially your rational mind, that's what I was going to say, is I brought that up in the email introducing us today, because this is the time, especially when we're in this part of our ascension process where we are receiving data information, this technology that autism is here to infuse us with. It is a spiritual technology. It is, this word technology, we understand it in one way in this physical world, but there is so much vastness to it. So if we can just allow it to pass through us, allow the information to be absorbed and taken in, and know that those comments that you said, Connie, about, you know, you're going to think I'm crazy and all of these things, that's the mind, that's the rational mind who only knows what it knows. And I just say, let it blab on, do whatever it does, but don't take it into account, because those are the stops that it throws up, because it wants to understand what's going on. So the rational mind isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's kind of like our left brain in some ways, where it's been just given a little too much time and power and credit, you know. And it's not that it doesn't have a role that it plays, but it plays a very strong role in our lives and our experiences that it's really not meant for. So now it's time to kind of open up that right brain, essentially, right? Open up those lower chakras and heal them and change them to resonate with those higher frequencies that we have available to us now. And so I think that's fascinating what you were saying about Daniel not being affected by this moon, because I honestly haven't been reading as much on blogs and that sort of thing, which sometimes I like to do that to really just kind of catch up on the energy forecast and all that sort of stuff. I know there's been some major changes, but I, like you, Connie, I'm on that inner journey. And so the literature that I find the time to read is really relevant to me and my course at this point. And it's enough for me to just know that there's been some really beautiful changes, because it's helping me to take myself out of my mind and not be in that intellectual experience as much as it is a very beautiful, energetic, spiritual experience that isn't intellectual. The more we try to grasp it with our mind, the more complicated we make things. So that's really great, everything you said. I think we're always on the same page, even though we don't always get time to connect, because we're doing it and we're deep in it at this point. Just a couple of quick housekeeping. We're aiming for our next show to possibly be around the 13th. I'll mention that again at the end, 13th of October. So a few weeks from now. And that just gives all of us time. You know, right now, I think that's what a lot of us need, is time to take in. And as far as, you know, Connie mentioning disclosure, there's a lot of that really going on. And she's right. I mean, that can strike a lot of fear and hysteria in people that don't really understand, because it's essentially that the truth is coming out, and the truth of our bondage as human beings is coming out. And really timely with even the information where we are within this book. So I know there's no coincidence. It's amazing to actually pay attention at this point in our time in history and everything that's going on, is to really be conscious in every moment possible. So if you're having a challenge with the conspiracy theory type stuff that's coming up, that's starting to be revealed, I mean, they just disclosed, what was it, yesterday or the day before, that NASA found water on Mars. You know, it's this big major thing, and I got to tell you, there's a lot more going on Mars than just water, and has been for a long time. So there's a lot of things that are going to be revealed eventually here, and our dear loved ones in autism have very much a lot to do with that, because they are literally not of this world. And you want to say something about that, Connie?
Yeah, Daniel says there are people living on Mars. That's what he told me on a board one time. He said there's people that live inside, what he called inside of Mars. I was like, I don't know what inside of means, but he said there are people inside, humanoids inside Mars, and humans that live on Mars. So, you know, and I read that yesterday about, oh, there's water on Mars. I was like, whatever, you guys think your nickel slick, but we got your penny change. There is more to it, but that's okay. You know, it will be revealed in time and at everyone's pace, and that's okay. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's got to be spoon-fed, you know, especially to the masses, because there's many people that are still kind of sleepwalking and just under a little bit of a spell, let's just call it. And what's beautiful about it is, even if there is a little bit of hysteria, I think that the angelic and the extraterrestrial, all of the benevolent beings in our world and our cosmos, and the all that is really rooting for us and supporting us. So as far as there being a crazy mass hysteria, I don't think that that's going to happen. I don't feel that. I feel that we're going to be kind of cradled through this. But the thing that's really important is that we got to do the work. We can't expect for anybody to be our savior. We have to step up, do the work, dive in. Connie, what was it that you were saying to me earlier today about, you almost said that you envied somebody who wasn't going on the inner journey, but then you said, no, wait a minute.
I said that the people who are not going internally, I'm kind of envious of them, because it seems like they're like the ignorance is bliss type of thing. So I was like, wow, I'm envious. But then I thought about it and I said, no, I'm not, because I'm a step ahead. I may be going through all this internal stuff and trying to, I don't want to say rationalize, but what I'm doing is, as I'm reading these books, my spiritual homework, or as I'm watching these certain videos on YouTube or certain movies, I'm applying them to what's going on internally, because it's very how do I say this? It's, I don't ever think about something like, oh, I want to think about this. It'll come up. And I'm thinking, why am I thinking about that? And then I'll see a movie or I'll read it in a book and I go, oh, and I apply that as the tool, So it's really cool. And I want to say something to what you just said about, because it's in the book right here. It says, there is a point in time where all have to choose to follow the leader or be the leader. Because we are not equipped to live in a three-dimensional world. We struggle here with worldly ways. And that's so true. That I love this, because she's writing about autism. This is her experience of autism. But it's also my experience and your experience, is our experience. Be the leader or follow the leader. Which one? And that's following the leader is what got us into the predicament that we're in, because we think that we need an authoritative figure. We think we need the outside God that we're having to chase. I need to find this guru. And there's nothing wrong with finding gurus but how are you doing it? Are you doing it because you think they're better than you? Or are you doing it because you say, you know what, I want to apply that as a tool for my learning? It's a big difference. Because a lot of people, they'll bow down, they'll bow down. And I have learned, and I used to do that too. I used to think, oh, you're higher than me, so that means that, you're better than me. And no, I've changed my perspective. It's no, I'm, hey, I'm grateful for, we're all master teachers, hey, I can teach you, you can each one teach one type of thing, but I'm not going to be the follower. Well, not to sound cocky, like, what is she, cocky? No, I am the leader, and I'm not going to give my power up to anybody anymore. That's what I've learned.
Yeah. Lyrica spoke with us about that. I don't remember if it was in the autism group a while back. It was a while back. And she was talking about that it was time for us to step into our leadership roles, all of us. And I think that the most impacting of teachers are those who don't exploit their students and who actually learn from their students as well. Absolutely. I think that we're stepping through, that's kind of the old paradigm of spirituality, is to look for that guru or the savior. I mean, that's kind of what I was saying is, that's the message isn't we're waiting for Jesus to return in the sky, like some of us Christians were taught when we were growing up, and that never, as glorious as that seemed, it was empty to me, and now I know why, because you're giving credit to outside of you. Can you talk a little bit about, you spoke about, someone being higher than you. And I think that this happens a lot with when you realize that your autistic child is this amazing spiritual being. And maybe not even just an autistic child. Maybe it's a bright child that you have that you've known is different. And one day you realize, wow, my kid is high vibrational. That happened to me. And so then you kind of are like, how am I supposed to be a parent, someone who's been taught to be an authority figure as a parent, to this child that is actually greater than me in some ways? I want you to talk a little bit about that, and then we can go into what that process evolves into. But how do we fall into that kind of old paradigm of raising somebody up on a pedestal above us, especially these nonverbal autistics who, when they start speaking, realize, I mean, that sentence that Lyrica first said, I'm not retarded, I'm intelligent. I mean, what does that do to a human being who is just trying to figure it out, you know, who's struggling through the challenges that something like autism can bring into your life?
Well, let me try to do my best to answer that. Okay, so this is my experience when I first realized that Daniel, because it didn't just start with the board, it started with him communicating with a co-worker of mine in a very miraculous way. But those communications were pretty good. They were, but when he started talking on the board and everything, I was thinking, and I realized he's telepathic and all this, and he's telekinetic as well. Like, he can move things with his mind. He's actually played Fruit Ninja. Yeah, he's actually done that with me, and you know, that's another story. And I was like, oh my goodness, how do I mean, this is not in the parenting book, at least one that I couldn't find at that time. So I was thinking, okay, how do I deal with this? So the best way I could deal with it was just by reading, trying to find resources, you know, online, maybe, you know, to see who's talking about this. And miraculously, not a lot of people talk about this. It's like the autism thing is, they go to the doctor, they go to the speech therapist, they go to the occupational therapist. No one talks about the energetics of it. So you're kind of in the dark, at least I was. So the best way I could do is just try to communicate with him more to see how I could help him. And you know what he'd always tell me is, you're doing great. You know, you don't really need to change too much or hold me on a pedestal. You know, just be aware that I am aware. I don't know if that makes sense, but just from when I read the autism book, and he knew that we believed in the fact that he was speaking to one of my coworkers, you just saw an automatic change in him, you know, just from that. So I would say to parents out there, once you realize that your child's doing something that either goes against what you're taught, or you don't understand, and you see that they're just this brilliant person, just don't change anything about yourself as far as bowing down to them, because you're still the parent, and that child is still learning from you. You know, you're teaching them about this world. They have what I call the higher knowledge, okay? But I'm teaching you this part, you're teaching me. Like, I'll tell Daniel, you know, if he does something and he gets mad when we get a little tiffy with him if he does something. So I say, hey, you know, we got all these things to do, and you did this, and it takes, you know, in the Matrix, you know, we got to clean up. No, we can't. There's not a magic genie that's going to come and sweep the floor. We got to, because you spilled this. Now I got to clean up. I apologize if I seem like I'm a little, antsy with you right now. And he'll go, well, you know, I'm trying. And I just tell him, okay, I appreciate that you try. You know, just like a typical, nothing has to really change that much. My advice to the parent is, once you see that, try to figure out how you can change yourself, because that's what it's really all about too. Like, once you change yourself internally, they are going to change. You don't need to do anything really that much with them, as far as, you know, like the main thing I try to do now is, I'll see if he wants to talk. If he doesn't want to talk, I don't force him. I'll just, okay, now let me work on myself. And you'll see he loves it. He loves when I'm reading. You know, that actually calms him down. So you see that it's not me bowing down or, treating him like a god, because I always have this joke with him. I say, I don't care who you are, I'm your mother. Because I know that Daniel is from a very high dimension. I mean, just sort of the things he says, and I know that he holds back a lot. He won't tell me things until he knows that my mind is ready to accept the things. And I do know that he does send me what I call telepathic hits, because I could just be sitting, and it's been happening a lot more lately. I'll just be sitting around and then I'll get a telepathic hit to Google a certain thing. And I'll Google it and it'll tell me something that I've been thinking about. And I go, oh, thanks, Daniel. Because I know that it was him. And sometimes I will go and confirm, hey, did you send that to me? Yes. Okay, thank you. Or sometimes he'll say, no. And I'm like, well, where did I get that? Your higher self? Okay, well, that's good enough. So that's the best, that's advice I can give. It's just, I'm just going through this. With me personally, my thing is to read, or my thing is if I do watch TV, which I don't watch too much lie vision, because it tells lies to your vision, but that's another story. But when I do, it's always watching something that relates to something we're doing, and if you pay attention to these movies, they always do. If you pay attention, they're already telling us what's happening or what's going to happen, but we just kind of look at it like, oh, it's just entertainment. Oh, better open your eyes. So anyways.
Oh, I love all of that. You really illustrated a very personal, intimate explanation of your story, your experiences of that dance that happens. It's like the souls came together to agree upon a certain experience or story that has many storylines as we experience this human experience. And it is such a dance. And there's so many great things that you touched on. I don't even know if I could, bounce off of a lot of them, but because there's so many great nuggets in there. One being especially that you are tuning into the synchronicity, you're tuning into the messages, and the fact that we're constantly supported. So instead of judging where information comes from, what it is, I love that the Google thing, because I personally love to use Google intuitively. No matter what it is that I'm doing, I will Google something and I will find the right article, resource, whatever it is that is for me to find for that particular thing that I'm looking for. It just kind of depends on what it is. And it leads me along a path sometimes. It may take me into a group or that sort of thing. And then I get to have a conversation with somebody or several people. It's really neat to notice that. And that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier, is that we really need to focus on the positive things that are guiding us along our personal path with what is going on right now. What resonates for us? That is such an important thing that Daniel's directing you to do right now, is to pay attention to you, because this ability to serve humanity in 100% way starts with us serving the inner 100%. So it's like a self-full service and serving the whole at the same time, because we are each very important components of the whole. And where we're going is to really starting to tap into that unity consciousness that Lyrica and Daniel are so readily within all the time. The process you discussed about this higher being and where we're at and how we're kind of engaging and helping each other, it's that ascension descension process. And so they don't really, when I say they're not from here, I mean that in a lot of literal ways. We almost all aren't from here. Our souls, our spirit, we're not from the earth, but we are housing vehicles that are very much a part of this entire living, breathing ecosystem of a planet. And the planet has its own consciousness. We are all part of consciousness. And we're all part of maybe what people will call the one, and I feel like the more I learn as well, that without being able to really think about it, I can sense and understand and even regurgitate information where it is expressing how we are one, you know, because we're coming from that state of amnesia, forgetting that we are part of that one. So we believe that we're separate. And the more we tell stories that empower that separateness, then the further we are away from digging deeper within ourselves to find how we're not separate at all. And it changes so much of our relationships. I love how you explain that with how Daniel and your interactions and all of that changes when you stop looking outside of yourself, even to him, for the answers. And you go inside, and the thing that's really cool about it is within, then you still have that communication with him, you know, and not just him, your higher self, which is then kind of still in a way a part of, we're all part of each other in that way, you know. It just gives this access, I think, to a lot more. And so the more that if we can look at it from, even if we can begin from the most mundane of places and say, oh, you know, wow, that totally matches with something that I'm having inwardly that I was questioning about and wondering about. And here it shows up on this totally non-expected place, you know, like you're watching football and it comes up in a commercial, you know what I mean? It shows up in the most magical ways. And I was saying to Connie, I'm like, you know, if the controlling forces utilize the media, I love the wordplay used with the television. Tell-lie-vision. That's a new one for me. So perfect and so true, you know, but that doesn't mean that, you know, the benevolent forces don't as well utilize that, you know. There is constant support for us. And if we just open our eyes, I like to say that we use our real eyes, you know, and we see the world from that other place, that higher perspective that no, we're not victims and no one's against us. And if we just make that decision to do the work and keep moving forward and keep our heads up and our hearts open, that, you know, we can't be led astray. You know, that's our power.
Yes, and to believe that you can make the difference. Because a lot of people, when I say a lot of people, I was one of those people until I proved it to myself, that they don't believe that someone says, hey, if you are the change you want to see in the world, so you change, or, you know, imagine what you want to see in the world. They think, oh, who am I? I don't have that power. Yes, you do. You do have the power to make changes in the world. Trust me. One example of that, and I saw this with Corey last night. An example of that is if you see something negative in the news, let's say some crime, our minds is what can create that crime from increasing. Our minds, because we get scared and we go, oh my goodness, and what if somebody robs me? Oh, I need to lock my door. Oh my goodness. And so we are creating havoc with our own minds because of the seed that we allowed them to plant. You know, we're watching this and going, oh my goodness, you know, so we create it. So that it's very important. And Daniel talks a lot about the law of attraction. It's very, and I used to think the law of attraction was a pile of crap. I'm not gonna lie, I seriously did, but now I see, okay, it's nothing. That's true. That is very true. So that's why we in this household, we do our best to just to walk in love. You know, even if we're angry, 90 seconds. You know, I will remember that 90-second rule. That 90 emotions are like 90 seconds. It's up to you if it's gonna, you know, be drawn out. And I live by that now. I'm like, okay, 90 seconds is over. Now, what do I do now? Okay, I don't like the way that feels. I don't like the way that vibration, me, you know, being in despair. I don't like how that feels, or me being afraid. Why am I afraid? I don't like the way that feels. I choose to go and do this now, or whatever. You know, it's not throwing it away. It's I'm addressing what is this? Why do I feel this way? Oh, okay, that's that. Okay, so let me move on. You know.
That's awesome. Yeah, the emotional, this is something that we are tapping into and awakening up to, is that emotions are that power behind our manifestations. And we're constantly manifesting unconsciously. We manifest everything that we see, you know, from the rock, the tree, to our bodies, you know, whatever, from, and experiences from our stories that we're telling. And the thing that fuels the manifestation to happen even quicker and more readily is the emotional part of it. So that feeling, you know, and so I love that you're sitting with the feeling and getting out of the feeling, or out of that emotional wave that's passing through, no matter what it is. It doesn't have to be a high, low. You know, there was a point where, even in my experience, there was kind of still, even though you're saying it's a high emotion or a low emotion, you know, it helps taking it from being the good and bad emotion, but it still in a way delineates it from making it kind of right or wrong in some way. There's that duality essence to it. The fact is it is what it is. And if we can just work with it from a place of feeling it, allowing ourselves to experience it, and then once it's passed, then choose, our whole reality changes, because we're actually making a conscious choice from a place that's not emotionally charged. Now, maybe as we practice this more, kind of like you do, like, for example, people do a yoga practice, and that's part of life. It's a practice. So you practice this experience of emotions, then perhaps you can turn around eventually and utilize that emotion as a tool. Utilize that, for example, what is anger, and change the thought that's paired with that anger, and make it a powerful creation, and manifest something right there in front of you that you actually want, you know?
As you're saying that, I immediately thought about the movie X-Men, the First Class. And I don't know if you've watched that, or our viewers, but there was a scene where Magneto is trying to use his powers to control Steel, and Professor Xavier says, you got to go between, what was it, compassion and rage, or something like that. Something, you know, and it was like what we would call a negative emotion and a positive emotion. He had to use both those emotions to be able to move that metal. So what you're saying makes so much sense. And that's also another example of how movies would tell us, they give us little hints, you know. So you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. I've been seeing that kind of in the disclosure stuff that I've been exposed to, is how much is in our media that is kind of like hints of what's really going on, but it's like that spoon feeding that we're getting. And this is the thing that's really incredible about it, is this is real. You know, like the things that we see, and I see that consistently with, you know, people that have these mystical powers, whatever the show is, or movie, or whatever story is being told, what fuels that student's experience. Another really good one that I really loved, I think it's called the Magician's Assistant, and it has like Nicolas Cage and a young man who is actually all
Sorcerer's Apprentice. The Sorcerer's Apprentice.
Yeah, the Magician's Apprentice. And then, you know, there's history of Merlin in it and stuff. It's a really great movie because there's a really cool dragon, metal dragon in it and stuff like that. My son loves that movie, and so did I. But in that movie, he's a student, so he's learning how to harness these powers that he has. And it all comes from harnessing those emotions in a very powerful, conscious way. And I've found that, you know, I'll feel an energy surging through me, and the thing that triggers it is maybe something that is making me feel angry. And so from there, if I'm present enough, I can say, okay, I'm going to tell myself a different story and utilize this emotion in a different way. And so the same energy that feels like anger can be a very powerful creative energy at the same time. You just change the thought that's paired with it. So maybe that's the next step, you know, is getting through the feeling, but maybe not just getting through the feeling, harnessing that emotion. And that's the thing that's been kind of hidden from us. I had this big realization as to why we don't get taught about emotional intelligence in school. You know, there's all these great ideas on how we can change education, and things that we can learn that are absolutely necessary, that could replace all of those ridiculous things that we're required to learn and test upon. And emotions is a really big part of it. But I realized that, you know, as long as the powers that be are able to control us, they're not going to allow that sort of thing into the system, because that's just going to give us our power. it's going to give us our ability to recognize that we can do so many things that they don't want us to do. It's like we can't be controlled anymore. And I really liked, I want to get back to the part in the book when you talked about what you do with Daniel, as far as and any mom out there, especially mom, I'm sure some of you dads too, totally get this. Okay, we're raising kids, we're raising human beings here, and what is required of that are some very important things that require attention so they become a habit or a pattern that you don't have to think about, which is like cleaning the floor and keeping your house and having respect for the things that you possess, so that, you know, they're not scattered all about, and you have a sacred living space that you can enjoy, you know, feng shui, whatever, you know, the energy flows lovely. And I know I've had to learn a tremendous amount from that, because I didn't have that growing up. I wasn't taught that. And it is a very important part of running a household, you know, is being able to do those kind of mundane things that they don't, that's not important to them. It's not really so important to spirituality in a lot of ways, but it's like when you're organized in your spiritual life, then your physical world, that's the law of attraction. That's what you attract. That's what you create, is what the universe so beautifully beholds to you and reflects back to you of what you're emanating out. So I love that Daniel, you know, in his descension process says, okay, well, I'm learning too. Okay. You know, and so I so appreciate that, what you were saying, Connie, about that little bit of thing. And it even says here on page 123, we are created wanting no earth contact for an important reason. And I think that that's because the way I interpret it, that is that they are programmed to not want upon all of these programs that control us, essentially. You know, yes, it's nice to have a clean house, but it's not the most important thing, you know, in the world above your spirituality, for example. And I was just saying that to my son the other day. I realized there's something that I hadn't instilled in him, and it just came through, where it was like, you know what? The most important thing for you in this world is your relationship with God. You know, and that's something that I hadn't said to him yet. And I realized, like, wow, I wonder if I could change the way that he lives in his life and goes about his life if I impressed upon him more on that piece. You know, so not wanting the earth things, the things that bind us to the physical reality. It's like working in a different way to get to an even more incredible experience.
That's beautiful. I do have a question. That's good. I would mention to him that, you know, God is important. How do you, because when we hear God in this society, we think of the Bible and whatever the case may be. So how do we go about that without, you know, this, how do I say this? You know, some misinterpretations and all this stuff. How do we go about bringing God in to where our children understand without hearing all the other stuff out there that, oh, this is wrong, that's wrong, or whatever the case may be? How do we do that? Do you understand what I'm asking?
I do. And that's absolutely coming from a place that I completely relate to and understand, because you and I both have had that experience where that was our programming from a very young age. That's the filter, that's the coat that we put on, or the many coats that is between us and our understanding of the divine, of our creator. And the thing that I know for my experience is I didn't go that route with my son or my children. And it's interesting to kind of have conversations with him sometimes, because he'll bring up kids that go to church, friends that he meets, and most all of his friends that go to church don't like going to church, you know, this whole thing. And I didn't want him thinking of it as necessarily a negative or bad thing, but I have found the most amazing thing to remind him of. So when I'm frustrated and there's things going on, I'm trying to get things done, and he's not holding up his side of stuff. And he's not in school. He's in school like 1 day a week. So he doesn't have a whole lot of, he's got a lot of freedom, let's just say. And so it's very interesting to kind of reel that in make, give him responsibilities, and then also make him accountable, because a lot of that upbringing, to be like raised as an example as a Christian or a strict, somewhat orthodox religion creates this, one of these moms was saying one day about her children being obedient. And I was thinking, that's kind of laughable to me, because obedience not even a word that's in our vocabulary, because there's something about that word that has triggered me since I was a child. So I don't use that with my children. Maybe I have thrown it out there once or twice, because to me, it's about controlling who you are and how you behave, rather than, what I tapped into and was reminded by some of my fellow awesomeism practitioners when I was running into some issues around dealing with my child and him dealing with the energies that were happening. I mean, the poor kid was like losing his mind, and part of me was being too strict, and the other part of me was wanting to be compassionate and just hold him and help him through that. Part of me was wanting him to be able to do it on his own. But then I was like, but I need to still not coddle him, but give him the tools. And the one reminder that has been, I've seen the biggest impact, is to remind him of the brilliant being that he is, and not even like focus on the fact that he's playing the victim role, because it happens a lot. I see it a lot in him when things aren't going his way. It's just part of being a kid too. So that part of it in that rollout, when I remind him of his brilliance and his creative capacity, and that he is creating everything that he's experiencing, and if he doesn't like that, he can change it. And that is his connection with God. That is the God being. And I tell him that. I say, you are God. You are a piece of God. And that is that brilliant spark that you are, that I keep reminding you that you are. So I won't allow you to continue down the road of woe is me, and it pretty much ends there. And sometimes I just walk away. I think that's the most important thing that we can be reminded of ourselves, is how incredible we are and how limitless we are, rather than our limits. It's very easy to do that, to focus on the, what's not going right, when that's just the trigger to help us focus on what we want and what is going to go right. What do we want to create from here? That's why I love that how you said, okay, now what do I want? What do I choose? That's a beautiful thing, is to realize that you actually have a choice.
And on that note, I'd like to read something I highlighted that goes back to what something you said. It says, we gain our clarity, we gain our strength. We start to see life as a school for our soul. Then the meaning of harsh experiences has value. We're not hurt by others in that contest. The struggle is with our own lower places that are being pulled up. The struggle brings our wounds to the surface so that we can see our errors and make a higher choice. And she made it clear to say that errors are not sins, okay? We are to thank the harsh relationships for its hand in helping us to grow. We have a choice to make when the strong feelings bubble up. We can throw them onto the other and seek blame there, or we can look in the soul mirror for our own imbalances. We think our safety lies. We think our safety lives in feeling soft things only, but that is not the truth. Our safety lives in daring to ask for wax of awakening. I love that so much. I really wanted to make sure I put that one out there, because that one really spoke to me. And I love how she said wax of awakening. And I took that section as, embrace what you would call the negatives too. Stop thinking that everything's going to be, oh, I only learn life experiences by, the positive things that happen. No, it's the not so savory ones too that, are there to help us in this 3D matrix.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and think about it. What's often more impactful for us is the things that bring us down. Those are the things that are the stickiest when it comes to us trying to process through it. That's the stuff why we drink ourselves away. That's why we numb ourselves and medicate ourselves, is because we don't want to face those things that hurt. you know, but it's kind of like looking at the whole pie and only wanting a slice of it that's blissful, you know, only tasting the parts of it that you want to taste without recognizing that there's a whole ingredient list that goes with it, you know. And I think there's something you said earlier that Daniel said about being aware that you're aware. I think that's what he said, but ultimately that is what it's about. It's bringing your awareness to it. It doesn't mean that you have to dive in and get all sticky with it again, or get sticky with the things as they're rising to the surface. It's really just bringing your awareness to it and being able to be detached from it. So that's another key with the emotional aspect of it. If you aren't emotional about something, then that's kind of the glue oftentimes that makes it so sticky and hard for us to move through things. But if we're able to be kind of that detached observer of something, then we're observing that from a higher dimension. A higher dimensional consciousness brings us to a place where, for example, we're seeing something as a spiritual being rather than just a human being. Somebody that is, so human is hue, like color. Man is, I believe that's just the physical body, and then being is spirit. So we're a combination of those things. And when we experience energy and things that we don't quite understand, which we are growing to understand, it can be very confusing. And the emotions, I mean, think about it. When you're in an emotional uproar, there's not even an ability to have a conversation, you know, with somebody and have a solution to your problem, you know, especially if you're telling yourself that story that caused you to spin out in the first place, you know. It's interesting to watch that downward spiral happen so fast. I feel like it happens so much faster than it ever has before. Something comes to my mind that's really it's jolting me in a way right now, because I used to get very emotional and my mother used to send me away because she couldn't handle what I was doing. And she said that I wasn't making any sense. And I would tell her that I was more clear than I ever am when I was emotional. So I'll have to look at that and see what that actually meant, because now that I'm understanding it, maybe I just felt like that's when I was really connected, because being an empath, you feel what other people are feeling. And maybe for me, it was very clear that what was going on inside of her was not what she was actually saying or portraying, because she was very good at trying to protect me from what she was feeling. And she thought that she was doing the best thing for me. But ultimately, my being was going, wait a minute, something doesn't match here. And so now I'm going crazy. You know, we talked about that before, how if we just can say on the outside what's going on the inside, then it calms them down, right? Like, because there's that dissonance doesn't exist. It's like, oh, okay, there's anger flowing through, there's sadness, you know.
Yes, and I believe Lyrica wrote in the book, and she did, how our language does not match our thoughts or what we are really experiencing. You know, our mouths, you know, they don't, what we say verbally just doesn't match, and that is so true. We don't. A lot of people don't think about that, but we do not match. Now that's what I'm working on. You know, I match what I feel. If I'm angry, I say, hey, I am angry. I have to clean this water up, or, you know, or I'm proud of you. And, you know, I found this, Daniel likes to be praised a lot. If he, you know, like if he doesn't have a toilet accident, he wants you to, I figured that out. He wants you to praise him. So I'll make it a point to, oh, you know, I'm glad you did that. Cause he's like, don't just take it for granted. I'm trying in this little world of y'all's to function and you're not giving me any props. So I give him props all the time, you know.
Well, that's a perfect example of, you know, when we manifest something that we're wanting and we don't acknowledge it, we take it for granted. I think it's really amazing what he's saying there too. He's saying, please acknowledge my creation, my hitting that milestone, my accomplishment. You know, something about it's bringing your awareness to it. You know, I really think it is. It's bringing that attention, and something about, kind of like you said before, when something happens and we get all engaged with it emotionally, we create more of that. We add to whatever's happening there. So why wouldn't it wouldn't it be absolutely the same in these positive ways where we're accelerating into more of the accomplishments of our being? And for him, it seems like a small accomplishment, but it's a big accomplishment in his world for the body that he's in and for the experience that he's having. And so I bet you what that does is it just says to his soul, I see you. You know, it's like God winking at you, you know, in synchronicity to say, you know, good job. How many times, like I know in the alchemy play that I play in, often they'll say, pat yourself on the back because you figured it out, you know? And it seems so silly, but it's amazing what it actually does. It really boosts you from a place that's not egoic, you know?
You know, Matt Kahn talks about that. He says, you know, we don't tell ourselves how awesome we are. We think that it's being, you know, we're being egoic or whatever, but we need to start telling ourselves, you know what, Amy, I love the way you took care of your boys today. Everybody got to bed on time. Everybody got good meals. You didn't, you know, you took care of your emotions today, or you handled them well. You know, you such a great wife. You're awesome, Amy. We don't do that. We think that's silly, but really we should. And I was going to bring up a point because I just remembered. I wanted to say it for the last show, but I couldn't make it. But I actually had a very interesting experience. I went to go pick Daniel up from Dayhab. It was, you know, several weeks ago, and they were having a talent show, and it was very loud. And one of Daniel's classmates, who's autistic, but he's, you know, he's a little verbal. He was walking the halls because I could feel in him that it was too loud, and he was really trying to blow off steam. And as I was walking, I had picked Daniel up, and I was walking behind him in the hall. And I'm telling you, as I felt that energy, I started imagining me circling him with a violet flame of love. You know, that's what I was doing, and I was just doing my best. And I'm not an expert at this, but you know, I do the best I can. So I'm just, you know, imagining it, and I'm even taking breaths myself to help calm him with my breathing. And you know what he did? Now remember, he's in front of me. He doesn't see me behind him. He stops in his tracks. He turns around. He shakes my hand, and he says, "You know what? When you were here on the planet last time, you were much shorter." And I said, "What?" I said, "I was shorter?" He said, "Yeah. When you were here on the planet the last time around, you were much, much shorter." And then he walks away, and I'm thinking, what the French toast? I'm already short, but I'm thinking when I was on the planet before, I was shorter. Now, you know, some people may have heard that and went, "Oh, he's just autistic. He doesn't know what he's saying." I look at that. That's on a deeper level to me. That he's talking about past life stuff, and hey, I know you, and just the fact that he shook my hand was saying thank you, you know, and he said thank you, you know, like he knew what I was doing. I thought that was just so miraculous.
That's what I was getting from it, that he was acknowledging what you were doing, and he was also blessing you with a message of some sort. You know, it was a lovely exchange. Thank you for sharing that. I love those kinds of stories.
And, you know, again, you know, a lot of parents, caretakers, you know, they don't realize the beautiful gifts, you know, that are within. I mean, that I can't make that up. That is what happened. And I was like, wow, that's so amazing that energy works that way. And just what he said, and he didn't talk that much. So just what he said to me was like, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of even what he said pairs with some of the stuff that you're learning about right now in your self-study and your spiritual study, for sure. I mean, I know that just from our conversations.
So I guess I was a gnome in the past life. Oh, bad joke. Okay.
Oh, it's so funny. We played so many roles in all of our lives. Actually, I actually just heard that reincarnation was written out of the Bible. It was completely cut out of the Bible when they translated it. And that brought a huge aha for me. So speaking of disclosure, but yeah, amazing. Like, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say with the reincarnation, my mom, she's really into the Bible. But one thing my mom says, she goes, hey, I love the Lord. She goes, but the one thing they can't take away from me is I know reincarnation exists because I remember my past life. I was Asian and I was running to go get my brother and the bomb went off. And she goes, no one, I know it. And what's so funny is, 2 weeks before she even told me that, I had no idea. I mean, I thought my mom was just like strictly like, just closed and everything. But like 2 weeks before she told me that, we were meditating in the autism group with Gail and them. And I was in my place of stillness and I opened my eyes real quick and I saw 2 Asian girls standing in front of me. And
Yeah.
I just totally, I forgot where I was, and even the room was different. And then it snapped back to my living room, but I was like, what was that? So my mom telling me that shortly after, I just made the connection. I said, you did have that life, and I think I actually saw you. Now she's looking at me like, okay, you all right, Connie?
I love those like moments of just like brief clarity. It's really a telltale sign of the awakening and ascension that's happening with the shift. It's and I can see how it's gradual, and I love that, because anything that happens too fast, too soon is too much. I mean, you hear stories of people that, for example, do like the Kundalini awakening, and they do it very the rising. It's the energy up the spine from the through the chakras, and it literally like rocks their world and their life, puts them into illness. Like different things happen. Do you have a story about that?
Yeah, when the awakening in 2011, I'm going to speak especially about my husband because I'm the rational one in the house. I'm the one that you got to beat upside the head to get it. But in 2011, he received so many freaking downloads, and he would tell me about them, and I was looking at him like, okay, you sound a little kooky, but you know what? I have to apologize consistently to this man, because ever since that day, everything that he said to me, that the downloads he received, the messages from the otherworldly beings, everything he said has come to pass. Everything, and I'm like, wow, because just going back to, you got to get it in small, what you said, you have to get it in small doses, is if we receive too much of it, we kind of, because my husband, he was giving me all this information, but he was kind of, I don't want to say unstable. It was just, he had to really ground himself, because, he's living in this world where he sees one thing, but he's being taken into realms, speaking to different entities, and they're telling him, oh, we know you. One of them even said, hey, we need your wife's permission to come help you with this project because she's a little afraid of us, and then they say to him, oh, enjoy your pizza with your wife. Now, unbeknownst to my husband, is I was driving home from work and I was thinking, oh, it'd be nice to have a pizza. And when I got home, I said, hey, let's order a pizza. He goes, they said that she'd want pizza. That is the type of stuff that, someone would go, oh, that's a little, but it happened in our lives. And I know no one can take that away. And all it did was make me want to know more. But like I said, with my husband, as when he's receiving all this information, it was overwhelming. And I know, me personally, had I received it like that, like he did, my cheese would have slid off my cracker. I would not be just cognizant right now. I don't know. I don't think I could have handled it. So with me, I'm getting it in small doses.
Yeah, I think that we all do, but we also we do achieve what we ask for, and some of us want it fast, and then we back off, and we're going to get into that sickness piece, because Connie wasn't with us last time because she was under the weather, and Lyrica touches on illness in a really incredible way, something that I haven't really visited it in that way. I know that I definitely, when I become ill, which isn't very often, or even, have seen how myself or others can exasperate their illness by just giving it attention. So I love this perspective that she brings into it. But before we get there, there's a couple of pieces that I wanted to talk to Connie about. So on page 125, Lyrica says, she's kind of talking about earth dwellers and teachers and that sort of thing. And at the end of this one paragraph, she says, they are teachers for their path, but not the path of another. We all have similar experiences, but respond from unique perspectives of development. And the way I saw that is, you know, we're always reiterating to you guys about going in. And I think that going within is the place to kind of really turn our focus. However, it's this kind of ebb and flow dance of the inward and outward, as you've been seeing from our conversation today. Because our conversation alludes to, you know, we go within, we do a lot of that introspection, and we're always checking within, as far as that's the barometer that you go to. That's that intuition part. And Lyric even talks about that in here as well, about the feminine aspect of who we are is that intuitive part, you know, because the mother, father, God that we are created of, that energy is a balance of masculine and feminine energies, no matter what body that we're wearing. So we have to balance those things within ourselves in order to just flow more smoothly with creation. And I was seeing how, you know, the fact that we tell you to go inward as much as we do is because we've just, like the mind, over focused on the outward. And we go so much so that we go outside of ourselves to find the answers that we have right within us. They're right there waiting for us to receive them, if we could only just be open enough for that. You know, we talked about that last time with Lori when she was on here, is being open enough to receive whatever it is that we're looking for, because it's right there. And I have a question for you, Connie. I wanted to know what you thought about this. She goes in to say, our highest reason for being here is to raise the bar from which we respond. What do you get from that? It's on page 125. She goes on to say, it wants to stay stuck on its original level of growth because to lift it is hard work. Safe way is not the easy way when it comes to spiritual science. Safe way is to listen to our own voice within to gain the true advice we need. Others often want us to be certain ways to meet their own unmet needs. There we go, looking outside of ourselves, wanting someone to change so that we can feel better. We must groom our own template of ascension, wanting God's input only. That's something I'm definitely learning about, and I think I touched on that.
It's funny you asked that, because out of that entire paragraph, what I had highlighted was we must groom our template of ascension, wanting God's input only. That's a key.
Yeah, I had that highlighted too and underlined.
And this is going to sound a little wacky, but our highest reason for being here is to raise the bar from which we respond. Raise the bar. I keep thinking, when I think of that, I think of not going with the norm. You know, we're so comfortable doing what everybody else does. Oh, you don't think that way? Well, okay, I won't think that way either. We're too busy. We're so outward, you know, as a society. We're so outward. What is everybody going to think? You know what? You just need God's input. That's why we're in this predicament right now, because we're too busy trying to worry about what other people think. And not to sound mean or anything, but I always say, you know, why am I marching to the beat of drums that are within, you know, that are enslaved minds? You know, you are programmed. I mean, most of us, all of us are actually programmed. It's about, you know, if you're willing to break your programming or to be internal. That's breaking your programming is internal. It's not outward. Outward is the program. I don't know if that makes sense, but you know. And so another thing I thought of too, which was why I was saying something's wacky, is I thought of the movie Lucy. I don't know if people saw that, but in the movie Lucy, towards the end, she had to give herself the full dose of that blue stuff, because she goes, there's certain cells in my body that are going to resist this. And this goes for us too. We're going to resist. We're going to want to do everything the easy way and resist really getting into the nitty gritty of tapping into our God self. And that's what I get from that.
Yeah, that was cool. I actually did eventually see that movie upon your suggestion. I had no idea what it was about, and really cool. I love in the end how she's, you know, they're like, where is she? And she says, I'm everywhere. Yeah, Yeah, it's really, really cool.
Yeah, I asked Daniel about that movie. He said that's how we see, you know, when she goes outside and she sees a tree and there's all this activity in the tree, and he said, yeah, that's similar to what we experience. So that was amazing to me, because I was thinking, man, if I experienced the world like that, I think I would kind of, whoa, I'd have screaming tantrums too, and flip out, and you know, all kind of stuff. I mean, goodness gracious. And nobody else can see this.
Right. I know, and you know, it's interesting, movies like that, because we have to be able to filter out the Hollywood stuff, you know, like the violence and the craziness that goes along with that. But I felt that as well. I'm glad you said that, because when you watch her experiencing this, you know, where she could feel everything and she could remember everything, and yeah, she could see the energy, you know, lines going up the tree and in people, it was really, it was bugging her out, you know. And like you said, I would be stimming as well, you know. If this is what our autistic loved ones are experiencing, if we could just get a glimpse of that. And that makes total sense, because even if they're not diagnosed with autism, there are people out there that I even know that are considered highly sensitive. They're on this sensory level. I don't even know if it's considered on the spectrum, which I found out that someone mentioned something about ADHD being on the spectrum. So I'm kind of like, okay, maybe we broaden the spectrum medically more. And it does include all of that. You know, it includes sensory disorder. They call it disorder, but it's just not the order that they're used to seeing. And yeah, really incredible to even just for a moment try to have that experience and understand what that feels like for them. And then it helps us to go, okay, maybe we're not going to judge that person as much from what we see on the outside. You know, it's kind of like I was talking about earlier, how we see this autism disorder as this physical experience. But, you know, the more you dive into it, I mean, I can't say this enough, you know, AWEsome has a really beautiful way, even just reading that book that Susie Miller wrote, AWEsome, it explains this energetic side to these individuals that isn't really readily available everywhere. And it really helps kind of put pieces together without having to even explain, if that makes any sense. There's just so much more going on. I say spiritually, because we can't see it. Energetically, whatever you want to call it, there is a delineation in some ways of those two things. But at the same time, I like to use them simultaneously, because those that aren't so esoteric can understand it, that it is very much about what we don't see. One of the Patricia, I cannot say her name.
Patricia Cote Robles.
Yes, thank you. The beautiful. I didn't want to butcher her name. She is an amazing being herself, and she's said some really incredible things, and she does these light activations. But she was sharing upon something that I want to reiterate. It's like what we're saying is, she says that the physical plane, the physical reality, is the least important reality that there is, but we make it the most important thing, and it is the last place for manifestation of what is happening in the spiritual realms to manifest. So I mean, it's like her saying that, those are things that I've known, but to hear her say that, something about that just sent movement throughout my whole body. You know, it's just like such resonance of the truth of that with the being of who I am, and being connected with that oneness. So I thought that was beautiful. And speaking of the physical body, I want to get to page 126, and I want to talk about this sickness piece. She goes in to say, our grids are imperfect now, yet of very high frequencies. Now, at the bottom of page 125, for those of you who have the book, go back to this piece, you know, and you can read along with it, because it's very much, I feel, and as she describes it, she's talking to all of us. She's not just talking about autism. And so this is a part where I feel very much that it's intertwined. So Connie, what do you think about when she says our grids are imperfect now, yet of a very high frequency, and how that relates to us as well?
Ooh, they are imperfect now because they are not balanced. With she was mentioning that they want to balance more of their male energies. That's what I'm getting. They're imperfect to us, you know. There's people that say, "Oh, there's a disorder," but they are of very high frequencies, because going back to the movie Lucy, that's how that's how they see the world. I mean, that is a very high frequency. So that's how I take that right there.
Cool. I love it. I love your input. Before that, she says she's talking about, let's see here. Says, we have huge invisible body outside our physical bodies. This energy body is our waves that touch our divine top server. These are waves like a spider web, very beautiful, that connect us to the heartbeat of God. So that's like, there's the visual, what you were describing in that movie. The same visual, how that what they're seeing, they see those energy lines, the grid lines. We sleeping in our shell until we start to awaken in our grids of holy light. And what I took from that as well, and this is something that I learned recently, yes, there's vibrational frequency and all that stuff, but frequency and vibration are actually kind of two different things. So frequencies can't be detected, but when two frequencies cross or come together, two or more, we feel it through vibration. It's almost like frequency becomes more physically dense, becomes more manifested when it links with others. So I thought that was really interesting. It's kind of like hard to wrap your mind around that one, but something about that, and I've been able to kind of stew with it for a while, so it makes more sense to me than it did when I first heard it, because I use those words together often, you know, but it makes kind of sense. If frequencies can't be detected, and here she's saying they're imperfect now, so it's like they're not turned on. That's kind of what I got from that. They're not yet turned on yet, because we have work to do to make that happen, to ignite those parts of ourselves. Like turn our light body on. That's a part of kind of where we're going in this ascension. But then she goes into talk about this part of it. And so maybe this will help this stuff resonate. As part of our energy upgrade, we think we get sick from germs, but that's not the core cause. Core cause is to address our energy imperfections through our DNA upgrades. Since energy creates matter, our bodies respond to energy calls for purification. When we get sick, we slow down and care more for ourselves. We have an opportunity to look inside the sickness, to see soul wounds coming up for release. The germs may be the agent to embed sickness, but the call to be sick is a soul call. Our bodies hold many germs inside, but only when we are ready to move forward do these germs create what we need to become lighter in density and disease. So even sickness can be a blessing to help us grow. And there she goes on a couple of more short paragraphs in regards to that. But I just love the run out, and I would love to hear from you about your more recent sickness and how maybe you learned from reading this part in the book, if anything kind of was like an aha moment for you or anything like that.
Well, it was an aha moment because we just did get over being sick, and we don't get sick that often here. And one of the things that Daniel typed on the board during that time was, I have the flu, which shocked me. I was like, what, you have the flu? He said, I have the flu, but do not take me to the doctor. I don't want them to weaken my body. So this right here, I've heard this before, that we get sick to slow us down. I know that a lot of people would have a hard time understanding that, but you definitely are put in the now when you're sick. You know how they say go into the now, and the now, you are in the now. You're sick, whether you want to be in the now or not, you're in the now. So I did notice that during that time there was a lot of reflection on my part, and of course with Daniel, he spent a lot of time in his bedroom staring up at the ceiling. So I'm pretty sure he was working on himself in the world.
Right. Well, I know, like when my little boy, my second child, who has febrile seizures, which is, for those of you who don't know what that is a seizure that is onset by a spike in the body's temperature. It's not a pretty sight. It's challenging for a parent to deal with, especially when they're these little tiny people. But there's also something happening there that if I didn't have my AWEtizm support, I don't know what I would do, because there was this energetic component to it that helped me really understand. Because ultimately, the hospital doesn't have answers. They just want, I love what he said, don't take me to the hospital because they'll make my body weaker. You know, they just wanted me to give him anti-fever medication, you know, this because in our Western society, our medicine is literally driven by the pharmaceuticals. I mean, they're who educate our doctors. They are who run everything. I mean, it's amazing looking at insurance, because I'm not a good candidate for insurance because I don't utilize the doctor the way that they act like you're saving all this money, you know, and you're saving all this money on drugs that I don't use, you know? So it's kind of like there's so many of these, getting back to the natural ways of being. There's homeopathy, you know, there's essential oils, there's all these different things that come from the earth that we can utilize to support our bodies and trust our bodies to do what the body knows to do to heal itself. And I happen to know from experiences that seizures indeed, and Lyrica and Gail have confirmed this, it's a download. And it's literally, if you think about it, I look at it like the way I saw it kind of through my inner sight is it's like lightning coming through the body. And that's kind of what it looks like. The body's jolting, it can't handle it. And so my question was, how can I support my child so that it's not such a crazy, you know, challenging thing for him? And at the same time, you know, some of the answers were he's not hurting. This is part of him incarnating into his body, you know, and he has all these other things going on. So it helped me to understand that in support wise, because all I was told was to prevent the seizure, which I couldn't, no matter how much anti-fever medication I gave him. And it was more about that, you know. And I love on page 127 how she has kind of highlighted the quote, "We honor the internal changes by making external changes in our lives that come from our higher self-knowing." I think we've been really talking about that all day today during this show. It's big, you know, it's a big thing to really have that dance, that inner outer dance that's happening now, because I feel like we're integrating as a species to be spiritual beings, conscious in a physical body. It's not about ascending off into some place anymore. You know, we've reached this point that we're experiencing things on this planet that we have not ever as a race, as a species, you know, as a planet. And we're going to miraculous places. And I kind of can't wait to see where that goes.
Absolutely. And I actually have that last paragraph circled because I thought it was so beautiful when she says, "We honor the internal changes by making external changes in our lives that come from our higher self-knowing. We cannot change on the inside without reflecting that change in the way that we live our lives. We resist here the most. Stopping from moving forward can implode on us in great ways of going backwards. We gain insight, we gain responsibility to follow it. When we do, we see the universe supporting us beautifully." And that just reminds me of Daniel. Autism mind is the unity consciousness surrounding the law of attraction. Short and sweet, eh?
Yeah,
True.
powerful.
And it's, you know, that is so true, because the inner changes that I've made, I do carry them out outwards. You know, to me, it's like, how do I not do that? You know, I look at everyone in a different way. Everyone, you know, before I was so judgmental, you know, everybody now, I don't care what they're doing. I always, and some people will say, "Oh, you just give everybody excuse." No, it's not that. I'm looking at it in a different way through my God eyes. You know, that's how I'm looking at the world, with you seeing the beauty in everything. And it feels better this way.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what's amazing about it is you're very conscious. You're displaying something that is really something notable, is that you are being conscious of how powerful you are. And so, you know, like, if you add your energy in a certain way to what's going on with other people, then you're just helping to add to that creation what they're manifesting. And I know for me, it's been the same way. And it comes with that self work that we're doing here and that we're talking about, because this is a perfect segue. So on page 129 in chapter 13, I totally thought about Daniel. In the second paragraph at the end, it says, sometimes we just sit down and don't budge because we are pulled so strongly to the source of the distortion. And it's kind of like what we're talking about right now in regards to what do we often do is we do gravitate towards kind of the negativity that's going on. But for those of us who haven't done the work enough to get to a place where we can, in a sense, rise above it, like we just become detached from it. We're able to observe it without judging it, because judging it just doesn't do anything but add more energy to what's happening there. And in emotional ways and that sort of thing, it just gives things that we really don't want to see stay alive, continue to stay alive, you know, and give credit, give your awareness to. It's like awareness is almost like a gift. It is a gift. If we give another human being our full awareness, our presence, that is an absolute gift. And it's also a gift to receive that from them. You know, I mean, think about it. If you're sitting there having a conversation with somebody and they're just allowing you to be your brilliance and actually saying to you, you know, how amazing you are, how much more of that brilliance of who you are can actually shine through, you know, without that judgment clouding it and making you feel wrong for being who you are, that kind of stuff. And I loved how he said that, because here he's coming from a place of the observer. So here I'm an energy gritter. I clean up energy. I do things mystically, you know. So sometimes I just sit there and I don't budge because I'm attracted to that distortion. So it shows how we all have that capability. We're all being pulled towards kind of those dark, clogged up places within the energy system. And we have the ability, with our strength and our awareness and our consciousness that comes from a higher dimension, that is of a higher dimension, that is who we are and can function from, to then bring our attention to that and our awareness and infuse it with love or the violet flame or whatever it is that comes to us in that moment. We don't have to be trained in Reiki or any kind of particular energy work or quantum healing, although the knowledge of those things really help. I found that myself. But I have also found that even though I don't have a certificate in a specific type of training, I can still play with energy and do things that I never knew was possible by just trying it, you know? So I love how you share that throughout this series, how you have these moments where you try it out. You just see what's going to happen and you don't judge it, you know? Something really incredible about judgment that we all need to start really letting go of. Let it go on its way. But yeah, I thought about Daniel not moving, because you've told a few stories about that in the past where he just kind of stands right there and he's gritting.
Yep, and I let him do what he's doing. So, and yeah, he'll move after a while.
Okay, so is there any? I know there's a little more here further into this chapter. Is there anything that stood out to you that you want to speak to as far as chapter 13 goes, Connie? Oh.
Let's see. No, I had most of my stuff in chapter 13.
Okay, that's okay. I do have another section here that I had a question for you. Got lots of yellow here. Let's see here. I like how she says here, we have such a high regard for the alchemy of language. So it's chapter 13, page 130, about middle section down. When we teach, we gain our earth legs, not easy to find. We have no tethers here until we seen as dear earth teachers. We have no way to talk until we get our soul to be the only channel that we live by. Talking is easy to be used as a weapon as well as a hugger. We have such a high regard for the alchemy of language. I highlighted that because the alchemy of language, I loved how she put that together. I mean, just, you know, alchemy is just kind of like the changing of stuff, and how the words that we say can so easily change an experience ourselves. In some of my alchemy work, we play with words, we wear words, and those literally change the way we present ourselves. I started doing that exercise with my son. I have him set up a triangle, and each leg is a word that he wants to be that day. You know, and I say, now put it on like a hat. It's fun to kind of play with it with kids because, you know, you have to just play with it. And that's the beautiful part about it, is that the more we play and we don't try to intellectualize it or make it something that we need to understand, it happens more quickly for us and it works. And then she goes into say, words in thoughts can be a powerful mover of things too. This is the language that we are focused on most, ready to get new idea. And I have a question for you down here at the bottom of that paragraph. She says, we're welcoming all who carry the insignia of autism. Do you have any idea what the insignia of autism is?
When I read that, the first thing I got was the insignia of autism is the diagnosis or that someone may feel that you're autistic, you know, the insignia of autism. Although there are a lot of individuals who are not labeled as autistic who are marching to the beat of that drum. So that's them too, you know, in my opinion. Yeah, but that makes sense.
That's cool. You know, it's something that I ponder because I almost felt like there was a part of me that really resonated with that, in that I wonder if I kind of asked that question. What came up was, I wonder if I have the insignia of autism, and that somewhere along the lines there, autism has touched my life and put me into this position where I feel like I have this message to share that helps with this mission. And so for me, it's like I resonate with them in ways, and I'm able to entrain with them in ways sometimes that I see them, you know, and I can sometimes be a channel for that sort of information as well, without specifically taking that credit. I'm not really sure. Let's see, there's the definition for insignia is a badge or distinguishing mark of office or honor, a distinguishing mark or sign of anything. So yeah, I think that what you were saying makes a lot of sense.
And what you're saying makes sense too. Thanks for that definition.
Yeah, I mean, I had to look that up. I should have looked it up earlier, but we are welcoming all who carry the insignia of autism. When she says all who carry, it kind of is like, okay, that says that to me that it expands beyond that, you know? She does go on to say, we are best suited to work with those who are young adults and for the most part nonverbal. We charge to them because they have the perfect ways to join in our service role. You know, something's been coming up for me in my reality a lot lately with some of my friends that have these kids that are autistic and they aren't necessarily nonverbal, and that's RPM. Do you know anything about RPM?
No.
Oh, okay.
What does it stand for?
It's another type of typing communication that happens, and something that's been really interesting is I know one friend in particular described a little bit of it to me, but her son, who is verbal, actually communicates with nonverbal autistics, and it's a certain typing method, and so I don't really know a whole lot about it, but it keeps, you know, Lori Shayew,
it's rapid method, right? Rapid method?
That sounds correct. I don't really know. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, rapid prompting method? It's Soma in Austin, Texas does this. RPM, rapid prompting method. I think that's what it is. Or,
do you know about it?
if it's what I think it is, Daniel actually did that for a short minute with her. And it's not assisted typing. They actually are the ones that I think Daniel used a pencil, and he'll point to the words with a pencil or stencil or whatever, and that's what I think. I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but that's what I think. It just dawned on me what Soma, that's her name, Soma in Austin, Texas, does that with the autistics. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's becoming more prevalent, and I think a lot more people are starting to dive into it and utilize it a little bit. And so I'm really fascinated and excited to see what comes of that. So any of you out there, I'm so sorry I didn't mention this earlier, but as you all know, there's always an option to ask questions when we're live. But by all means, jump into the Autism Experience group. And if you're not even a part of that, go on my Google event page and we can have a conversation there. If you have any questions and you're watching this at a different time during a replay, there is a place there where you can make comments and ask questions and kind of be part of this conversation. We are, as always, open to hearing from all of you out there, and we appreciate very much from those of you that we do get to hear from. Just even if it's a little bit of gratitude for what we're doing and that sort of thing, because then we know that we're having some sort of an impact, and not only that, but this amazing book that is truly a love letter to humanity. And I'll just kind of close it up here with the last part of chapter 13. It's on page 131, where Lyrica shares, power is the will of God working through chosen ones. Chosen ones are those choosing to serve. I love that, because she's touching on the fact that we're not special and chosen, but we've chosen to serve. We have dire times coming that will have many tears flowing for this world. When we feel the pain of our earth brothers and sisters, we begin to see that we are one dear tribe. We are one world of humanity. We must heal our barriers and poor judgments. We must get to a heart world way of joining together. Even enemies must bury their hatchets to bring in love and peace. I thought that was just beautifully said. I don't think there's more to say after that.
It's the perfect way to end the show.
Great. Well, thank you for sticking with us, everybody. Again, we are going to try to tentatively set our next broadcast for October, is it 13th?
Yes.
Which is also a Tuesday, same time, same place. And again, share with us anything you want to share. Thank you so much for being with us today. It's great to have you back, Connie, seeing your beautiful self. And we'll see you next time, everybody. Have a beautiful day.
Bye-bye.